Most of us never learned how to train our brains, which is why most of us needlessly settle, struggle, and worse, suffer. My name is Chris Doris, and I want to make brain training mainstream. This is my series, Tough Talks, Conversations on Mental Toughness. I'm interviewing badasses from all walks of life on what mental toughness means to them and their unique approaches to strengthening their minds. Hey everyone, welcome back to Tough Talks, Conversations on Mental Toughness. Today our guest's name is Stephen McGhee. I've known Stephen for the better part of a decade. We've been trying to get him on the show for a while. We actually had one scheduled, but we had technical difficulties. The second one, I'm not sure what happened. This is the third, as they say, third time's the charm. And you know what? There's going to be a fourth time too. Let me explain why. Today is going to be installment 1 of 2, right? Because Stephen, 8 years ago to the day, did something incredibly profound, right? Which of course we're going to elaborate on extensively. And I really wanted to go back and explore that, do it like a deep dive conversation on this profound experience that he created for 7 men in Argentina on a mountain called Aconcagua. The event was called the Aconcagua Men's Project, right? Aconcagua is almost 23,000 feet tall. It's the tallest mountain in the Southern Hemisphere. And he did a climb with guys who had never gone above 14,000 feet, him included. So I don't want to spoil anything, but that's what we're going to spend today on, right? So you're not even going to hear anything today about the Stephen McGhee of 2019, like the modern day man who's creating miracles in leadership and business and coaching and writing and keynote delivering and keynote speaking. That's going to be installment 2. We talked about this. We agreed on this because you know, it's like we talked a lot about how should we do this. We really need to I want to do 2 things with you, man, which is I want to really share the profound value of what you created in the Aconcagua Men's Project, the climb, and which, by the way, he made a documentary out of, okay, which is called Climb for Freedom. And and you're going to get a copy of it free, Compliments of Him, which is an incredibly accurate expression of his pure and deep generosity and thoughtfulness and love. You're going to love this dude's vibe, okay? He really vibes high. Let me just read you his bio, okay? Stephen McGhee is the owner of Stephen McGhee Leadership. He is an international keynote speaker, author of 3 books on leadership, his latest being Get Real, a vital breakthrough on your life and leadership, and a visionary guide to highly influential leaders across the globe. He's got a background in finance and a graduate degree in spiritual psychology. You will immediately experience the diversity in his presence when you start, and you will immediately. That's a guarantee. Additionally, Stephen is on the faculty at the University of Santa Monica, where he teaches soul-centered professional coaching as one of his favorite topics. Stephen believes that theory will only take us so far in our own human evolution. Therefore, he leads programs of an experiential nature, such as the Aconcagua Man Project, which later became a highly acclaimed documentary film entitled Climb to Freedom. This film chronicles the transformation of 7 men on a year-long journey to climb a high mountain and bring the application of that experience back to their lives and relationships. Now, that was 8 years ago. So, as I said, 8 years ago today, they're on the mountain. These dudes are on. And I watched this documentary 3 times. The third time was today, about 2 hours ago. And every time I wept. This is a really profound documentary, piece of work, really, event, miracle, you could call it. I was moved, I was scared shitless at times, right? I was inspired. I was saddened. You know, it reached me on all emotional levels. And that's what so the agreement that I made with him is that I really want to spend the whole time deep diving into the value that everyone, man or woman, athlete or not, climber or not, every human is going to be able to extract extreme value from the lessons that occurred as a result of this profound experience. Okay, the preparation for it, the execution of it, and additionally, the integration and the closure of it, right? The completion and the integration of it. So that's what we're going to do today, and then we're going to have him back really soon for installment number 2. Where we're going to talk about, hey man, hey Mr. McGhee, what are you bringing? What's the magic that you're bringing today in the world? And we're going to have another deep conversation. He and I can't talk without going deep, and what I mean by that is deep into our commitment to having people's lives be profoundly affected in a beautiful and empowering way, to help people up-level their experience of this miraculous life. So, all that said, without further ado, let's meet the man, Stephen McGhee. My man, Stephen McGhee. Brother, it's always great to see you. Thanks for making time, man.
Oh man, it's feels like a long time coming, and it's perfect timing, and it's so good to be with you and see you, man.
Yeah, as always, I really appreciate you and your vibe. I love your vibe, man. You know, it's huge, and I think that's going to come up a bit in our conversation today, and I hope it does. So, I would love to start with this amazing project that you completed 8 years ago to this exact time, called the Aconcagua Men's Project, which in my note taking, by the way, I noticed is, if you make an acronym out of that, it's AMP, which I think is pretty cool.
I do too. I like that.
Right. And
yeah, we were definitely amped up. That's for sure.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And so it involves 7 men, right?
Mm-hmm.
Climbing the tallest mountain in South America called Aconcagua, right? In Argentina, right?
Right. It borders Argentina and Chile.
Oh, really? Okay. And you documented the whole thing beautifully. You made an amazing documentary, a 57-minute long documentary, which I've watched 3 times. The last time was within the last hour right now of my life.
Yeah.
Was moved to tears on 4 separate occasions in that hour, which is profound. We'll talk about a couple of those.
Yeah.
But I have several questions about that, because I think that this, I'm sure that your answer to the question, why did you even do this, man, is going to pretty much be like the metaphor for our entire conversation today.
Yeah.
Right. Which is how, because as I was going through it and pressing pause and making notes and pressing play or thinking, just simply reflecting on what I just heard, or just pausing it and let myself cry. Like I wept, man. I wept.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've heard that a lot. And I would let myself think about what is it that I'm experiencing right now. And it's profound. So first of all, before I even get to the questions, I just want to say props to you, bro. Thank you for the whole thing. So the first question, we can defer this. You can answer this now, or maybe if you think the answer to it would be more useful later, then I'll defer. You mentioned at some point in our conversations, I don't remember when or what context, but that a guy that we have both coached with, Steve Hardison, said something to you that had a shift in you that permitted you to even do the whole project in the first place.
Yeah.
Do you remember what that was? And should we address that now or later?
I think it's great now, because without that moment, I don't think we'd be having this conversation about this project. So I had decided to launch the project, and like any project, I'm sure you and everyone listening can relate to what I'm going to say next.
Okay.
It's a great idea when you're on your couch sitting at home with your notepad or your computer, creating this vision of this project and what you want to do. And I was so excited and thrilled about it on every level until I got about 60 days into the process, and it got really hard fast.
Oh, wow.
I got so many people that wanted to do it but couldn't do it. It was just one no after another. I was having trouble with the filmmaker, and because I wanted to turn it into a documentary. I was having trouble with my writing project side of it. In essence, everything was really hard and challenging.
Okay.
And I walked into Steve Hardison's office, all prepared, by the way, Chris, to exit stage left, to basically say, this is too frickin' hard. This isn't going to happen. Everybody's a no so far. And I got about one half sentence into my prepared speech on how this wasn't going to happen. And our beloved brother, Steve Hardison, cut me off and proceeded to tell me exactly what I was about to do, which was to make up rationalizations and excuses for why I couldn't do the very thing I wanted to do. And it wasn't long into that conversation that I started to see the light again. And started to see that this is just part of anything any of us do that can get really challenging. And when we're faced with that, we got two choices at that point. We either get tough mentally and emotionally and spiritually and we go forward, we find the greater love in the project, or we go back to old familiar patterns. And sometimes for me, those patterns have been to quit. So he didn't let me quit.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, it was a gorgeous moment. And as I said, I don't think we wouldn't be having this conversation about the film and the project without that. Yeah.
Right. Wow. So, okay. So what did you say, the greater love in it? The greater love for why I was doing it in the first place?
Yeah.
Well, why? So why did you even do it?
Yeah, I was at a time in my life, Chris, where I felt like I was getting soft as a man, and I was projecting that out onto the world of men.
Wow.
Like I was looking out into society and I was going, we're freaking getting soft as men. We're not clear about our commitments. I wasn't clear about my commitments. I didn't really understand the depth of integrity and accountability. And I think that I was pretty comfortable. I was comfortable physically. I was in decent shape. But there were things I wanted to do with my body, and push myself beyond the limits I had previously pushed myself on and that was a big part of the why. It was really about going deeper, further into areas that I hadn't been before, and by the way, taking 6 other men with me that wanted the same thing, and that was a beautiful thing, man. That was really, really amazing for us to all support each other and going beyond what we thought was possible, and really deepened us as men in so many ways.
Going beyond what we thought was possible. And for those that are listening or watching, maybe I didn't say enough about the project in the first place before we got to this point, which is, I mean, you guys, this was years in the making. It was a huge climbing a mountain like almost 23,000 feet is amazing. The preparation was amazing, and you documented all of that, which is so brilliant. There's just so much for a dude that geeks out on mental toughness. This is like a dream documentary for me, right? Yeah. So you guys, how you train? Why the title? The title, "Climb for Freedom." Why is that the title?
Yeah. Well, that's the title because and in the documentary, which all your listeners are going to get the opportunity to watch if they want to, but the title "Climb for Freedom" came to me as I realized that anything we do extrinsically, in other words, any physical thing we do or emotional thing or mental thing or spiritual thing we do, often gets projected outward, like it's an extrinsic result. Like we look at sales objectives, or we lose 20 pounds, or we look at our commitment to a woman in a relationship. But all of that is extrinsic. And I wanted this film to be about the intrinsic journey of leadership on a mountain, so that everybody got to really build a deep infrastructure of who they were from the inside out, as opposed from the outside in. In other words, I would build confidence because I got a result of climbing the mountain. But what if I don't summit the mountain? What's happened inside of me? Who have I become as a human being by doing the things that were required to get on that frickin' mountain? And by the way, and this is important, because these days there are people out there doing ultras and runs across the desert and 100-mile this and 200-mile this. And these guys, including myself, we were not mountaineers, man. The reason 23,000 feet is significant none of us had been above 14,000 feet ever. And we
You
did this,
included?
and me included. I had never been
Wow.
above. I'm a Colorado grown dude. I've walked and climbed and done more than most people have at altitude. But I had Jeff Patterson, one of the guys on the team. He was from LA. He had never been on a 14,000 foot mountain when he signed up for the project. So we were inexperienced climbers.
Wow.
And that's why that point's significant. It's not like these guys had been mountaineers for the most of their life. Hiking maybe some, but not 23,000 feet. That's a different deal.
No question. One of the things I love about the documentary is how much you share with the viewer on your coaching of them. And your coaching was not just, obviously, your coaching was so broad. It was obviously you were training them physically, right? But you were also training them mentally. You were also training them spiritually. Or maybe we were all training each other. I mean, you were in charge.
Yeah.
But that was very obvious. I mean, there's so many lessons just listening. You're just watching that documentary. There's so many lessons on the inner work. I mean, you guys were always doing in your. Okay, so that's one of the questions. Is there was and it might have actually. Who was the last gentleman's name you just mentioned?
Jeff Patterson. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Jeff. You guys were working out at Red Rocks, which is amazing. What an amazing gym.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Amazing is right.
I mean, do people, they just open it up and like whoever wants to goes in and just can use the facilities during the day to work out?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, in the summer, especially, you can go up there around 6 a.m. And the park is open, and you talk about, you want to blow your legs up and get your ass in shape. Run up and down Red Rocks a few times, just outside of Denver, Colorado. A beautiful amphitheater.
Yeah.
The best concerts in North America get played there every summer. But yeah, you will not go there on a weekday during the summer and not have a slew of people slogging up and down that thing.
There's people all over the place.
Yeah.
Well, one of the times, so you were recording one, and Jeff said, oh, maybe it wasn't Jeff. It doesn't matter who it was. What they said was, I'm having a particularly hard time. The workout today is unusually difficult.
Right.
And you listened, and then I think they were starting to talk about maybe they weren't hydrated enough, or maybe they ate something that wasn't working for them, or whatever. And you listened, and then your response was fascinating to me. Because I think like maybe most physical trainers might have said, well, what did you eat today? Did you get enough sleep last night? Are you hydrated? But your response to his observation of his struggle that day was this: what are you thinking? That was your automatic response. Yeah. And then the scene shifted, so I didn't get to hear the answer. But let me ask you this. It's not as much about what his answer was as about, why was that your question? Why was that your response to him in that moment?
Because, and you and I both know that we both know where this is going, right? And all your listeners know too, but the thinking is going to supersede anything that's happened physically. This idea that our thoughts are more powerful than anything we could conjure up with our body or any excuse we have physically, that's the beauty of a project like this, because what we learn is that we are so much more than what we think we can do, and what we have put in our bodies, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's just going to be tough days, man, right? And so that was the reason for my question. What are you thinking has everything to do with whether you continue. What did you eat has very little to do with whether you continue. I'm not saying it isn't important.
Of course.
I'm just saying in that moment, at that time, and in training especially, because you're going to have that on the mountain for sure. We were on that mountain for 16 days, and we had crap for food most of the time.
Wow.
You know, we didn't have good nutrition on the mountain. So what am I thinking has everything to do with my experience.
Well, if it was Jeff, then he certainly learned that in the time between the training at Red Rocks and when you guys were up on the mountain,
Yeah. Yeah.
because there was a comment that he made later on, which was amazing,
Yeah.
right? Do you know where I'm going with this?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, he said, the mantra that he came up with. The mantra that he came up with when he was, so he started saying to himself, and this is when you guys are, who knows, I don't know, 17,000 or maybe more, I'm growing stronger and clearer with every step I take. That's what so that was the answer then to like, what are you thinking now?
Yeah.
Right? How are you getting through this pain? I'm growing stronger and clearer with every step I take, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
Right. So so what we're filling our minds with. When I was watching you guys climb, one of the things that I do to get my head right when I'm struggling is simply repeating the two words, yes and good.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was watching you guys like take painful step after painful step, and you guys are in phenomenal shape, and I'm watching you and it's like, oh my God, that looks so hard. Mm-hmm. I was actually I found myself saying yes and good to you.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome 8 years later.
Yeah.
Hey, one of the things I was really excited to ask you about with this whole thing, because this is an amazing metaphor for everything. When I work with people who do a lot of performing, whether they're athletes or executives, right? And I noticed that there are really unique differences in the psychology of preparation, execution, and then finally completion/integration. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, I think if we jump to the last point you make about completion and integration, it's important because to me, it's the area that gets the least amount of focus, and perhaps it's the most important. So there's a lot of focus on preparation, and I think that's great. But I think that when you finish a project or a climb or anything that matters to you, and you don't take the time to fully integrate what you learned, we don't get to take the value forward. Like, I like to look at what worked and what I could do better. Those are two simple leadership questions that anybody can use. Like, right. What did I do well?
Okay.
And what could I have done better?
That's great.
As a form of integration. And to give ourselves the dignity of the process of integration. As a quick example, I thought when we came back from the climb that it was going to be, and we did have a nice party in Mendoza, by the way. We had dinners and we rode horses and we had some wine, and nice. it was amazing, and lots of steak, and like beautiful time together in Mendoza. But I will tell you though that when we got back to North America, we got back to the States, the team kind of fell apart. And I didn't expect that. I thought that the team would be like brothers forever, arm in arm. And we had a service project that we were working on. But the long story short, Chris, is that people kind of disbanded. People kind of went in different areas. And I thought that was weird. But what it really was people, the men, needed to integrate in their own way. They needed to go away from the team and look at what they learned. And then, of course, later we came back together as brothers on the team and we were stronger. But there was a period of like, I don't know if I'm going to see these guys again. And I think that happens. You hear about it in the military. You hear about it in professional sports. You hear about it in a strong work team where people accomplish these Herculean tasks. And then they disband and they go away. And it's like, what happened to the dream team?
Wow.
That's or think of a rock band, like some of your favorite bands, like they were like crushing it. And then all of a sudden you go, where are they? Mm-hmm. Well, they're not around anymore because they did this amazing tour and now they disbanded and I think it's integration. It's like, what's next?
Yeah. Well, it's 8 years later.
Yeah.
Okay. So like you said, you were at, I think before we started recording this, you said it's today, 8 years ago, you were on the mountain, which I think is really cool for the timing of our dialogue.
Yeah. Perfect.
I bet your answer to like the month after the climb was complete, your answer to the question, so how are you integrating this, may be very different to your answer today. Is it?
Yeah, it's different because it's at a whole nother level. Every one of us has gone off and applied the learnings from the Aconcagua Man Project in their own inevitable way out in the world. And that doesn't mean that we're together as a team doing it all, but we are together in a way. It's like we grew so much together that every single day I would say that everyone on the team takes something from what we learned and uses it in a daily application to what they're doing.
Do you remember if I had asked you like a month after, right? So 8 years ago, if I had said, or if we had had an interview or just a conversation, and I said, so, what was the meaning of this for you? What are you taking from it? Do you remember what your answer might have been back then?
Back then, it might have been more about the physical level for me. It might have been more about how well I did at 23,000 feet and how strong I felt because I trained so damn hard. And it might have been that, in those days.
And what is it now?
Now it's the spiritual evolution for me, like who I became by putting my body on the line and realizing that that's important, but understanding that the strength I developed physically transferred to the evolution of myself spiritually. And that's an interesting dot to connect. Like that you hear about these people that do these amazing tasks physically and they grow spiritually from it. Like we develop a muscle that has us being more patient, that has me being more calm, that has me being more in joy, that has me appreciating the gratitude of a moment more fully than I would have before the project. Wow. So those are a few attributes of spiritual growth for me that came from doing the project.
Right. At some point during the documentary, you asked, or you mentioned, you referenced the importance of doing something unreasonable. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we all have a different relationship to reasonable and unreasonable. And in the corporate work that I do, I get a lot of pushback on this because there's a lot of thinking in corporate America that it should be reasonable. And I believe that leadership is about going outside of our comfort zone, outside of what we currently know, into the unreasonable nature of things, meaning, I don't understand this. I haven't done this. This is not comfortable for me. We don't have the resources for this. Those are reasons why not to do something. And they make no frickin' sense, really. They're just like Steve Hardison called me out on rationalization. That's a nice rational lie that you can't do this because it's too hard. But the truth is it was unreasonable for me. And because it was unreasonable, I grew from it because I had to build a muscle that otherwise I wouldn't have built inside of myself, a mental, emotional, physical, spiritual muscle. So unreasonableness is a great, great gift for ourselves and for the people that we love and that we care about. Like, let's go into the unreasonable nature of things here and see what we can create.
Along those same exact lines, you also talk about suffering. You talk a lot about suffering in the movie. Do you call it a movie?
Yeah.
It's a movie, right? It's a movie.
It's a movie. Yeah,
it's a movie. So, what's good about suffering? And let me say this about that before I just drop the question, because I talk a lot about suffering. I don't know to whom to attribute this quote that we've all heard, which is, "Pain is inevitable, suffering is optional."
Yeah.
I don't know do you know whose that is?
No.
No, I mean, I don't think anybody does. So, my understanding of the work of Buddha is that he committed his life to examining the question, is suffering necessary? I think his conclusion was no.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested in hearing from you, because you told the guys in advance, you said, fellas, and this is at one of the meetings at someone's house, and you're all together sitting around, you're getting deep, and you're doing the work, like you're getting these guys' heads right. And you said, you can count on, fellas, we're gonna suffer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what's good about suffering?
Suffering is underrated.
Oh, Roger. Okay, that's a note.
I mean, I think the whole world
Yeah.
is trying to get more comfortable, to make life easier, to come on, guys, think about it. Guys and gals, like, think about it. When have you grown the most in your life?
Uh-huh.
You know, I've grown the most in my life when I've done some suffering. And I mean, there's a million ways to look at it. Like, I don't know that much about, like, I would say, and I may be misquoting here because there's so many lineages in the Buddhist tradition, right? So probably some of your listeners can fix this for me or correct this for me, but I suspect the Buddha sat so long in an uncomfortable position, meditating the thought of suffering, that he or she that does that goes all the way through the suffering into the peace of it. But you don't get there without at first being uncomfortable. Do you know who David Goggins is?
Oh, yeah, man. I sure do.
Well, so listen to that guy talk about suffering.
Right.
Like, he makes me sound like a ballerina when
He's
he talks about it. You know,
yeah.
I mean, that guy is one intense dude, man.
For the
I mean,
viewers and listeners, yeah, David Goggins is a former Navy SEAL who's really putting out a lot of content right now, which is amazing stuff.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Like several books on exactly what we're describing, or everything we're talking about here, which is the power of the
yeah,
mind and getting past suffering. Right. So maybe it's just semantics, like pain, suffering, whatever. It's going to suck.
Maybe. Yeah.
But unless it doesn't.
Yeah.
Right. It's going to suck. But that's an interpretation, right? Right. That's just this sucks.
I'll give you just a real simple example. So I think I've told you, Chris, before, one of my daily ritual practices is ice therapy.
Yeah.
And
right.
I don't mean soaking I don't just soak from the waist down. I'm fully immersed up to my neck in a frickin' tub of ice every morning.
Wow.
For almost 4 minutes. Now, guess what? When I first started doing it, I could barely stand the pain.
I bet.
Could barely. Now it's just, what it is for me now is enlivening. So it sucked for the first month and a half.
Wow.
And now it's enlivening. So the suffering of it took me to another level. And so now I have less inflammation in my body. I recover faster from my workouts. It's better than a big cup of coffee. It's something I enjoy doing. So maybe you're right. Maybe your point's the best one, Chris, which is it sucks until it doesn't.
You, at one point, what did you call it? It was at High Camp 1.
Yeah.
There was a doctor there who would check everybody's vitals and stuff and see how your general health was to say if you were in shape enough to continue, right? That's a smart idea. And what I found fascinating about the results of that is that you come on camera and say, yeah, and everybody in the group tested out fine, except me.
Yeah.
Your blood pressure had skyrocketed to, I think it was 180/20 or something like that. And the doctor's like, this could be very, very dangerous. And do you remember what your immediate response was? Like your very first thought reaction to that information?
Well, it was, honestly, as I think about it now, I don't even know what I said in the film, Chris, but I think it was embarrassment.
Oh, wow. No, you didn't say that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think I was embarrassed. Like, wait a minute, I'm the leader of the pack here.
Right.
I'm not supposed to be the guy that's like blowing out his blood pressure here.
Right.
And it was a real moment for me to really check in and go, what the fuck am I going to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, am I going to go up the mountain or am I going to stay here?
Right.
And not only that, you have to, by law, at least what they told us was that I had to take blood pressure medication from that doctor who didn't speak English, by the way, and
Wow.
he handed it to me in a foil wrapper. It was like a drug deal.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't,
Like, am I
I'm
taking
the kind.
ayahuasca over here, or what's going on?
Yeah, who knows? But it was a wildly uncomfortable moment, and of course, as you know, I went on, and
Right.
my blood pressure adjusted. It was really just a function of acclimatization. My body was just, getting used to the altitude.
It's another example, though, of like being masterful with responses, because like if I document it, you said one of your first responses. Okay, so it was embarrassment, but then it was also it's over.
Yeah,
Right? It's over for me,
yeah,
and the notion of quitting,
yeah. Oh,
which
yeah,
is actually a really important theme in this movie.
yeah,
Right? There's a lot of learning in that. Like at the very end, it's so powerful when Greg talks. We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
yeah, yeah.
What did you do with your thinking, though, when that whole doctor thing? So you didn't, obviously you kept going. You summoned it.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so what is it? Could you teach us, what did you do with that information? Did the information the doctor gave you was not helpful? Well, I don't know if it's helpful. It wasn't what you were hoping for. It ain't,
Was
it ain't what you want.
wasn't what I was hoping for. I didn't expect it, and
So we'll
it,
call it bad news, okay? We'll call it bad news. Now, I don't believe
yeah,
that, but for the sake of the learning moment here,
right. Bad
that was
news.
bad freaking news.
That was bad news.
You
It
got
was
real
an
bad news.
obstacle.
What did you do
Yeah.
with it?
Well, the first thing I did, as you just reminded me, is it's like it's over. So the first thing I did was go south,
Okay.
which is I'm done.
How long
I'm
do you think you stayed there?
not long,
No?
not long, but I think it's important to share this with
Uh-huh.
everyone, because everyone that listening has done this, I'm sure.
Okay.
Which is, I think this is over. And honestly, like, if I'm completely transparent,
Yeah.
right now, I wanted a way out.
Wow.
I wanted a way out. I was starting to suffer, and
Wow.
and it was like, oh, this is my way out. Like, I can't climb. The doctor's pretty much saying you're going to hurt yourself. You're probably going to blow your brain out if you keep going. So uh, it's a weird thing. It's like, oh, this is a good way for me to go down.
Oh, how convenient.
How convenient.
Here's
I could be at the Hyatt in Mendoza in about 3 days having room service.
Right.
But ultimately, so there's that. And I would say, step one, give yourself the dignity of the process, which is,
Give
I'm
yourself the dignity of the process. All right, let's
yeah,
hear it. I want to hear that.
yeah. Step one, give yourself dignity of the process, meaning I'm going to look at this and I'm going to acknowledge what my thinking is, but I'm only going to do it to a point of awareness. So I have awareness on my own thinking. So I am not my thinking. I'm
Uh-huh.
just aware of my thinking. So it's a big distinction. People think that they are their thinking.
Mm.
You're not your thinking. You are not your thought. You are not the thought, I'm going down. You're not
Mm-hmm.
the thought, it's over. It's just a thought.
Mm.
So what the next step is to give yourself some space and observe your thinking, which is what I did. I found a boulder. I actually sat next to one of my teammates, Troy Wagner, and Troy was amazing in this moment. This is not in the movie, but I give him kudos because he sat next to me. He didn't say anything for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Then he looked at me and he said something like, what do you think you're going to do? And he just gave me the opportunity to think it through. And 20 minutes later, my thinking was entirely different.
Mm.
20 minutes later, the thinking had changed from it's over to this is normal, this is part of a climb, this is part of the acclimatization process, and I'm going up.
This is really huge, I think, for people, right? Is to not, wow, that sounds like a story of Well, I guess that's a great word. Is giving yourself dignity. It's a dignified story because you did not react to your thought. So you got bad news, brother. Your blood pressure is out of control right now. You're going to blow your brain out. Okay, not what I was hoping to hear from a doctor at High Camp 1.
Yeah.
And then you're like, fuck. It's over. All right. And I am embarrassed and and oh good, I can get out of this. Here's my out.
Yeah.
But then then this is profound. So then what you're saying is you just witness those thoughts. You acknowledged that those are thoughts, you are not them. That's just what I'm thinking right now. And I'm just going to sit with that and be an observation of that. So chill with that.
Yeah.
And you had a comrade who sat silently with you. This is amazing. This is not in the movie. This is beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. This is really cool. I'm really glad this came up because this is not in the movie. This is about as cool as anything I think in the movie.
Yeah.
Really. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And then you just permitted yourself to be with that. And ultimately after you say 20 minutes, it's nothing. Right? You're like, all right, we're good. We're going to go.
Yeah.
We're going to keep going.
Yeah. Well, and I think it speaks to all the work you do, Chris, which is that you can train this thing called the brain. You can train this thing called the mind.
Okay.
And you can train it to be aware of what it's doing. You can learn to observe it and have, like, I would call it a realization. The realization that I've had in my life is I am not what my thinking is. Like it's not the problem. The problem is never the problem, right? It's always what I think the problem is that's the problem. And we've heard this 1,000 times, but so what? Until you realize it, until it's a realization that is embodied in your heart, in your gut, in every cell in your body, it's not as valuable because then it is just a thought. But a realization is a step forward. A realization is something you can own and embody.
You started this last comment with the word training. So true or false, would you have been able to have that shift in thinking on the mountain with that exact instance of the blood pressure without having trained yourself to do exactly what you just described you did on the mountainside before?
Yeah. I think it's a third answer. Sorry, but it's an I don't know.
Really?
I don't know. And here's why. Because I think that when I think about my life and everything I've done in my life, there were iterations of that along the way. And it speaks to what you asked earlier about being unreasonable. Like that level of being unreasonable teaches us, it trains us that we are not our thoughts and that we have an opportunity to be aware of them and to observe them, but we are not them. So over time, I think we become more aware of it. And that's why I think it's so valuable to be up to stuff in life and up to stuff in the world that is constantly having us out of our comfort zone and being unreasonable about what's important.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that answer. And I'm also going to call a little bit of bullshit on you right now because I know enough about you to know you're not lying. However, you're being a little humble right now because there's no question. And it's, the fact that even during the training at Red Rocks that you're asking, so what is your thinking right now that's having you, or what are you thinking right now? You're always uber conscious of the power of thinking. You're asking questions about the thinking. You are asking that to the guys when you're on the mountain. What are you doing to keep your head strong is a question you ask your guys.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So the point that I'm interested in right now about this is that you brought up is training the mind, really is the value of training the mind. So that when you're in a critical experience like that moment, right?
Yeah.
And that's a huge life moment. It's a huge life moment, right?
Yeah.
That can go either way. And I think the variable that'll govern the directionality of where it goes is how strong is your mind. which goes
Yeah.
back to how much have you trained? You said you were in unbelievable physical condition, and you were also in unbelievable mental condition.
Right. Agreed.
And I think it's important for us to have the listeners, especially on a show like this one, which is all about mental toughness, right? It's called Tough Talks.
Yeah.
Really, really appreciate it. And I don't think that we could ever reiterate this too much.
Yeah.
Right? Is the importance of training your mind. So how do you do that? How do you train your mind? You're a mentally tough mofo. Fact. How do you train your mind?
I think it's daily ritual,
Mm-hmm.
number one.
Mm-hmm.
Like that there's, as I described earlier, like there's
the water, the ice water.
Yeah, or doing the thing I don't feel like doing.
Doing the thing I don't feel like doing.
Yeah, that has really assisted me in mental toughness.
That is really interesting. The value of doing the thing you don't feel like doing.
Yeah.
Say more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I simplify it, let's say that most people that are listening to this show have some kind of physical, fitness routine or meditation, let's say, or they want to have a nutritious food, or they run a business of some kind. If you look at any of those 4 areas I just described, there are things that occur or things that need to occur that I don't feel like doing. And if those things run me, and I do the thing that I want to do before the thing I don't want to do, I know that I'm not getting to the essence or the core of the importance of those things. For example, physical fitness. There's just days I don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of days, honestly, that I don't want to do it. But I know that I've trained my mind and my body what's on the other side of it. And what's on the other side of it is greater flexibility, greater strength, greater happiness, greater everything. So there's just times when you just observe the thought, I don't feel like doing it, and you do it anyway. And that's true with business. It's true with sitting and doing meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Don't feel like doing it. I don't feel like doing it right now. I'd rather go have a cup of coffee, or I'd rather go, do a million other things than sit and be quiet. Because as I said earlier, there's times where we sit on our comfortable couch and we do these objectives and goals in 2019. And by the middle of January or the end of January, most people, by statistic,
Mm-hmm.
have given up on those things. Why? Because they don't feel like doing it anymore. It was a good idea. It's when Steve Hardison called bullshit on me on the project. I didn't feel like doing it anymore. So maybe there's awareness on it, but maybe, Chris, it's like find someone that can support you in it. Like find a brother like you and I have been for each other, and say, dude, you asked me to hold you accountable to some badass shit. Yeah. And that's what I'm doing right now. I don't care how you feel, because I love you too much to listen to your crap.
I love that. That's so great. I don't care how you feel. Damn it, get it done.
Yeah.
Do what you said you'd do.
I mean, that's what Tough Talks is all about, right?
That's beautiful. Yeah. I don't give a shit how you feel. Do what you said you were going to do.
Yeah.
That's love. Here's a question for you. Why, when you guys summited, it's so well captured. I'm so glad you did that. Went to all the extra effort of that happening, as if it wasn't hard enough.
Right.
Stephen, why did I weep? Why did I weep an hour ago watching that? Because
that summit scene, which by the way was done with a GoPro, and that's what's really wild about it is, but I'll talk maybe more about that later. But why did you weep when you saw the summit scene?
Yeah, I know why I wept, but you tell me why.
Well, I think you did, and I want to hear why you did. But I think you did because the part in you that was inspired by us got activated.
That's it. That's exactly
like that. That's freaking me up there.
Yeah. Right.
That's me in jubilation and exultation after 16 freaking days of suffering. And the human spirit prevails in a moment where the inspiration comes forward and you weep.
Yes, that's
for the
beautiful response.
for you, for me, and for everybody else.
Right.
What add to that though, Chris? What else touched you about it?
Well, I don't know if it's so. You know what? Okay, it's our godliness. And you said after 16 days of suffering, brother, it was a hell of a lot longer than 16 days. I mean, how many?
Yeah.
Right? It was a lot
Right.
longer than
Yeah.
that. Go back
Yeah.
to
True.
back to the very first workout session. So it was about human potential. You know what? Why I wept is because you just demonstrated the reason I'm in the business I'm in.
Yeah.
That we're all designed. We're goddamn miracles.
Yeah.
We are. Mathematically speaking, every one of us is a miracle.
Yeah.
The probability of any of us occurring is incomprehensibly infinitesimal. Or minuscule, rather.
Mm.
Right? So we're miracles designed to create miracles. That's a miracle. And so what I'm witnessing is the godliness in all of us, the creator in all of us,
Yeah.
right? The
Beautiful.
unbounded, the infinite potential in all of us, which is as exciting as anything could be to me.
Yeah.
That's why I wept. So thank you for that. Thank you for that reminder of how amazing we all are.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the reminder of what happened on the top of that mountain, because that was a moment for sure. As you say, a godly moment.
Yeah. Okay. Talk to me about the word human.
Well, I think what you mean by that is, the word hu, Hu, is Sanskrit for God. And so human, human is God man. And so I just have always loved the Sanskrit hu for lots of reasons, because it resonates at such a high frequency. I mean, we go to yoga and we hear a lot of om, and om is beautiful and lovely and all that, and it vibrates at a high frequency. But if you really feel negative someday as a listener, just chant the word hu. Like hu is a clarifying tone.
Wow.
And it's a Sanskrit word, as I said, meaning God, and so human, God man. That's where it comes from. Humor, which is also great, like more we laugh, we have fun, we giggle, we get blissed out. Humor, more humor.
I love that. Humor. It's like, that's so fun.
Yeah.
Hey, you should humor.
Yeah, humor. You should really humor.
I should consider humor.
See, there you go. Good laugh.
Right on. See, it works. It's working right now.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's so good. So, buddy, there was one more. Okay, the very end. I'll tell you what. I think that the last 10 minutes of your documentary are as powerful as any minutes in that documentary.
Yeah.
Okay, because so what's happening is you kick it off. You guys are down back at the bottom. You're in warm clothes. It's nice. You still got a little ways to go though, but you're happy. You're psyched. You've done it. Right. You're on your way back. You're about to get the steak and the wine in the shower. And you start talking about, like, now we're going to start integrating. And then I don't know how much time passed, because then there was two guys interviews with it was Scott and Greg.
Probably Jeff and Greg.
Oh, Jeff and Greg. Okay.
Yeah.
And some time had passed. Right. And they talk about how they integrated.
Yeah.
Right. And that was really, really profound, because for very different reasons. So Greg didn't summit.
Right.
And he had to deal with the whole thing that you started to think about, which was the quitting.
Yeah.
It's really interesting how he talks about that. Like, he invites people to say, like, if you have any shame around having your truth change, you call me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Are you still in touch with him?
Yes.
So how would you predict, and I know you can't speak for him, but how might you predict Greg would respond to the question that I asked you a few minutes ago, is what's your truth now about how you've integrated the experience?
I could be totally making this up, so thank you for the caveat, because I can't speak for Greg.
Right, of course.
What I think is that Greg, and I would say this if he was sitting right here.
Great.
I think Greg gave up on himself. I don't think Greg would quit again. And I think it's really tricky, because it's like what I went through with thinking about quitting the whole project. Our ego, it can be so, what's the word I'm looking for, Chris? Compelling. Our ego
convincing. Sure.
thank you, compelling and convince us that we're quitting something for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And I love Greg, and I think that's what he did. I think he quit for the wrong reason.
Now, do you
and
think
I think
is that the Aconcagua for him from the Aconcagua project?
Maybe it is. And if you were interviewing Greg might say, no, Stephen doesn't know anything about me, and that's a bunch of crap, because I did quit for the right reason. But I don't think so, because now we're 8 years down the road, and when you see a pattern repeating in another human being over and over and over again, and you care enough about that human being, you go, that pattern's repeating itself.
Yeah.
And it's like, when do we break the pattern? Because it isn't going to be easy. It's never going to be easy. I have found that it isn't easy. I've found that those are the come to Jesus moments, man. That's when you look yourself in the mirror. Nobody can help you, really, but yourself.
Really?
Well, I think I know why you're saying really. Like Steve Hardison helped me.
Right.
But ultimately, you're going to sit on the boulder, or you're going to look in the mirror and, hey, I'm in the business of coaching like you are. Like, go get a great coach that can hold you accountable. Like, go get one right now.
Right.
And have one that will tell it to you straight. Like, in your work, I know how you are with people, Chris. You tell it to people straight. But ultimately, that person still has to choose.
Yeah, of course.
They still have to look themselves in the mirror and choose.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Brother, thanks for making time today, man. This has been profound. I love you.
Yeah, me too. Love you too, brother. And what a great walk down memory lane. Thank you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, yeah, you're welcome. Thanks. And the memory is, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of amazing feedback from people who listen to this. It's going to spark a lot of real powerful truths in the present for so many people. Where would you like people to find you, to follow you in your remarkable work?
Well, my website, McGhee, MCGHEE leadership.com. Everything kind of goes from there.
Great.
And I also want to make sure in your show notes or someplace we can gift people the documentary. So what's the best way to do that, buddy?
Just tell me right now. So people who are listening to the podcast that may not be able to see this, they can at least hear it. And I will make sure that they're also, that this is also in the show notes.
Yeah, beautiful. So Vimeo is the best place to go see the documentary. It's Climb for Freedom. And if your listeners use the code, all caps, LEADER, LEADER VIP, they will be able to watch the documentary for free. So you just click purchase and then put in the code LEADER VIP, and then you can watch the documentary.
Dude, that is unbelievably generous of you. Thank you for that.
My pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
And I want to tell, so everyone who's listening or watching, please take 57 minutes out of your life and watch the documentary, man. It's so profound, and you did such a great job with it, and so important on so many levels, many of which, but certainly not all of which we just touched on in the last 50 or so minutes.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you, man. I really appreciate you taking time.
My pleasure, buddy. So good to see you, and I hope we get to do it again.
I love that. Well, then we shall. Thanks, brother.
Good.
Take care.
All right. Thanks, man.